It's August 4. I haven't updated y'all in a while. Yeah, I've I've been struggling writing chapter 3. I actually took a break, a very short break, like 4 days break. And during the break I wrote a children's short story for a competition that I entered very last minute, like um literally I had to submit it. The deadline was also last Thursday. So, yeah, just some updates on what I've been doing in the meantime. And it's now the third week, the beginning of the third week since I started writing, or since I started attempting to write chapter 3. And it's going, I don't know. I hit a roadblock that I only figured out last week, and the main reason for the roadblock was because what's that? Because I figured out that I did not have a good enough sense for the specific scene locations in my novel, because I before I started drafting, um, I already had a write up basically for just the main town, Isengel. A bit on like the factions, a bit in the history, a bit about like uh the mood, or just those stuff, like how it looks like, a bit in the mood, and what's like keeping the town running despite being, you know, a dying a dying town essentially. And so I had that, but I realized that I was struggling because I did not have that kind of thing, or a basis, for the individual locations within the town. I had a map of the town, but I did not have stuff like an idea of what the mood will be, what it looks like in certain places, like the streets, or the town square, or the garrison, which is essential to chapter 3, because my original plan for chapter 3, at least in this version of my outline, was to have my main character arrive in Isengel, head to the garrison, and then come across um, come across certain roadblocks in her search for information, including the highlight, the focus of the chapter, which would be her running into an ex-friend, someone she has history with, and and the drama that is inherent to that kind of reunion. So the garrison is essential. Understanding the garrison, how it looks, what kind of mood, what kind of feeling I want to convey with the location, would be essential to writing that version of chapter 3. And I did not quite have that pinned down yet. It just had me struggling, and maybe I'm not explaining this correctly. Maybe if you're still confused about like why it's so important, like why don't I just like write my way through it? I don't really need a setting. And yeah, maybe for some authors, maybe for some other writers, but I find that for me to write well, or to really get into the flow of writing, I need to understand the connections, the relational framework, or yeah, the connections between characters, setting, plot. I need to understand like how things relate to each other and connect to each other, so that I feel more comfortable writing, And with that chapter 3, um the draft that I had already written, which basically was just the opening, but like 600 words of opening, which is way too much, right? It did not align, the place, the setting that I was describing did not align with what I needed to happen in the story, and with how the new character that I'd be introducing, the new key character that I'd be introducing, his name's Villain Arc, as in Villain Arc, Villain Arc, yeah. It was not the kind of location that would create Villain Arc as a character, or that would prompt his change from who Ellerin knew in the past into who he is at the beginning of the story when he's introduced, right? So I sat down and I decided that, I actually need to work this out. Which is why I put my drafting on hold, and I pulled up my outline for Act 1, because Act 1 is the only section of my novel that I have outlined per chapter. And then I listed all of the scene locations that I could see these plot beats taking place. And then from there I took that list, and then for each location I listed down each scene that would take place in it. And that was actually a really, really helpful exercise, as in it brought to light certain aspects of my outline that didn't really make sense, in terms of like, okay, these scenes all take place in the same day, but my main character is basically going back and forth between two different locations in the same day, so it didn't make sense. And then I got some more inspiration for how other things would connect, and I also was able to pinpoint certain locations or certain scenes with a bit of a nebulous location. Like, I just chucked them into one location with all the rest, but mood-wise, or at least the kind of feeling that I wanted to create with those scenes, and the character that's associated with those scenes, they don't fit in with the rest of what's going on in the location I set it to before. So I ended up making an entirely new location, which actually also helps flesh out the world building, because there was this tiny subplot that I removed before, that explained or that showcased certain aspects of the world building that I just decided to pull into the background before. But with the addition of this new location, I could actually shine a spotlight on it very briefly, just so that people know that, yes, I've thought about this, it's there. So really good stuff happening there because of that exercise. My next step was, or still it still is in the process. I just focused on the most essential locations for now, but my next step is to go through each specific location, and then just brain dump like what kind of mood I want the location to have that aligns with the scenes that go in those locations, right? And then afterwards, based on those, just brain dumping also as well, things about like descriptors, things in the environment, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a very useful exercise, and I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I started on it. I actually ended up rewriting the opening of chapter 3, right? And it went well. It went very smoothly, and it's actually a lot more immersive than it used to be, even if it has even if it technically has like less descriptions than before. It's like half the word count. 300 words of opening versus the 600 words I wrote previously, right? So, yay. I'm glad. I think I will count this as my updates for all of last week, right? So, so future Vivi here. Um, I've actually run into some problems verifying my YouTube account because my phone number isn't being accepted. I may or may not have too many Google accounts for various things, including like a spam email and an art email. So while I try and get that fixed, aka while I try and get the eSIM I ordered to arrive, because apparently there were some issues there as well. And so since I can't post any video over 15 minutes long, this is a 22-minute video combined, I am splitting this into 2 videos, and that will be my update for today, right? Or well, tomorrow morning, as of the time I am videoing this. If you're watching this, thank you so much for reaching this far. I will continue my updates in the next half of this video, which you will find linked up here. Yeah. Bye.